on the closed caption at the bottom, and the captions should show up and be working very well. And we'll find out if they don't, but we expect that they will. And it's there today for accessibility for anybody who needs the accommodation or just interested in getting more of the information if the auditory signal that you're listening to is challenging. These are very challenging times, obviously, for everybody around the world, and we're honored that you've chosen to share some of your time with us. For those of you who don't know, CHC is a private, not-for-profit rehabilitation center for people of all ages who have hearing loss. We provide hearing testing and hearing aid dispensing, speech, language, and auditory training and mental health counseling, all for people who have hearing loss and their families. We also have an extensive public education program, including our Noise Center. During the past 6 weeks at CHC, all of our work has been done remotely, and we've held several virtual events educating our constituents on the ins and outs of video conferencing when you have a hearing loss, how to improve the auditory signal in remote learning for children and for adults, and more. Also, the technology is kind of new for us, so bear with us as we continue to learn, and if something goes radically wrong, we will figure out how to get back to you. If you have any questions or comments during the presentations or after, please type them in the chat section. It will be private to me if this works right. And then after the presentations, we'll read the questions and provide answers. Before we start, I'd like to let everybody know that among all of our special guests, we have one very special one, Carol George, who is the granddaughter of CHC's founding member, Edward Nietzsche. And we're so happy to see she's waving. And we had the luck of finding Carol, I think about 10 years ago or so, right. Through a great search, and she and her husband, George, have been friends since. I now would like to introduce Nancy Nadler, CHC's Deputy Executive Director. Nancy spearheaded the development of CHC's Noise Center in 1992, and she's going to provide us with an overview of International Noise Awareness Day and its importance, especially today.
Thank you, Lori, and hello, everyone. It is really so wonderful to see all of you here today on the 25th International Noise Awareness Day. And first, I'd like to say, I know that these are just extraordinarily difficult times for all of us, and so I really do hope that you and your family and all of your loved ones are safe and healthy. And I also know that because of the coronavirus pandemic, many of us have had to scale back our activities, our planned activities for International Noise Awareness Day. So it's especially meaningful that we are all able to connect in this way. Even though it is virtual, it is really wonderful to see all of your faces. So it's really hard to believe that it's 25 years ago that we marked the first International Noise Awareness Day. And what started as a local event really overnight became international with partners all around the globe with one common purpose, and that is to educate the public about the harmful effects of noise on hearing, health, and the quality of life. And actually, many of the partners who started this with us 25 years ago are actually on this call, so that's really exciting to see. So while I know that many of us have had to postpone some of our activities for International Noise Awareness Day, we all know and we all live that noise is a year-round concern. And so we encourage you to plan local activities whenever it is safe to do so. If you would take a look at our new website that we just launched, noiseawareness.org, we hope that this will serve as a clearinghouse and a source of resource for all of you, for all of us. It will be something that we will grow together. So let us know what you're planning and we can add to the site, and that will inspire other people to get involved. And our message remains the same. It's very clear: protect your hearing and protect your health. At the Center for Hearing and Communication, or CHC, noise and its impact on hearing has always been a concern for us. Over the past 25 years, there's been more and more research to support what we all know, what we all live, that noise hurts. Noise is one of the leading causes of hearing loss. In fact, the latest statistic that I've seen is that there are 48 million people in the United States with hearing loss, and according to the World Health Organization, 466 million people in the world with a disabling hearing loss. And the impacts of hearing loss are very significant. We know that 1 in 3 people over the age of 65 and 2 in 3 over the age of 75 have a hearing loss. We also know that untreated hearing loss in adults has been associated with depression, social isolation, a 3 times greater risk of falling, and an increased risk of dementia and cognitive decline. And what we're seeing now with the crisis of today's pandemic is that hearing loss is creating additional challenges for people. Almost overnight, communication shifted from in-person meetings to video conferencing, or in-classroom instruction to remote learning. And for someone with a hearing loss, these platforms make communication very difficult. So today we have captioning. I hope all of you are seeing how that works. But captioning, we have that through remote CAR. It is not currently a feature of Zoom. You can have captioning through some apps and in Google Meet, and we're happy to share that information with you. We have a lot of that written in our blog, but it's not something that happens naturally currently for Zoom. So for people with hearing loss, it really makes this communication difficult. And for those people who are elderly, who are sheltering at home, maybe sheltering at home alone, having a hearing loss increases the social isolation that much more. And then there's the issue of masks. Today in many cities around the world, certainly in New York, wearing masks to keep people safe is required. But if you have a hearing loss, the masks make communication so difficult. We're hearing from people who, when they take their masks off, they're losing their hearing aids. And the masks are muffling speech sounds. And people who rely on lip reading or facial expressions for communication, it's making it very difficult. And I think this issue of masks is going to be with us for a long time. So before I turn this over to Arlene, who's really going to talk about noise, I think Arlene, past, present, future, where we are now, just want to reflect a little bit on the soundscape of noise in New York during this pandemic. For the past 6 weeks or so, every day, sometimes all day, and sometimes throughout the night, people are hearing the noise of ambulance sirens. And while sirens have been a great source of noise and stress in the city for years, given the context of this pandemic, the noise from the ambulance sirens is now triggering a very devastating emotional reaction. But there's another sound that New Yorkers are hearing, and maybe we're hearing it in different parts of the world too. And in New York, every night at 7 p.m., when people open their windows, we're hearing the sounds of clapping and cheers to support our frontline healthcare providers. And that sound, or noise, depending how you define it, triggers a different kind of emotional reaction. We're also hearing from people who are working from home, people maybe who worked from home for years, and they're emailing us and calling us and saying, you know, for years I have not been able to work from home and concentrate because of the noise outside. And finally now I can concentrate because it's quiet. We're also hearing from people who are working from home saying, I can't concentrate because the people next door are having Zoom dance meetings and there's kids and they're remote learning and there's a lot of noise. So no matter what, the noise around us is impacting how we feel. We know it impacts our hearing, and it's a significant part of our lives. And I think Arlene really has been our leading expert, our guiding force in this area for years. I call her our noise maven, right, Arlene? And so I really want to turn it over to you to talk a little bit about your perspective on where we are now with the situation of noise.
Thank you, Nancy, and thank you everyone at CAC, and hello to all the people who are on, and I know quite a number of you. 25 years ago, remember, we decided that we wanted to recognize noise on a day and get people from all over the world to join us to sing. It's interesting that I started working in this area over 40 years ago. And it was really with a complaint from a student of mine who said her child was at a school in which the passing trains were intruding upon the learning of the children in that classroom. Now that would seem obvious. The children should not be near a noisy elevated train and it's coming in every 4.5 minutes. But the teacher could not teach. And she said, could you help me? Well, how am I going to get the New York City Transit Authority to reduce its train noise and possibly get the Board of Education to pitch in by putting acoustical ceilings in the classroom? The one thing I did know is that you had to do a study. And so I went to the school, met a terrific principal, Mark Shapiro, and we did indeed find something that my daughter at the time, who was 8, thought was very obvious. The children could not learn as the trains went by every 4.5 minutes. And by the 6th grade, the children were nearly a year behind in reading compared to children on the quiet side of the building. And then, of course, that paper had to be published in a peer-reviewed journal. But what was remarkable about that study was the reaction of the parents, the public officials, the press, the media. They began to realize that the noise of New York City's trains were intruding on children's learning. And with the cooperation of a large group, we were able to persuade the Transit Authority to come up with procedures to lessen the noise next to the train, and of course, get the Board of Ed to put acoustical ceilings. And lo and behold, the classrooms were quieter. But of course, again, public official asked me to go back and prove it. And then the second study showed that the children that had been a year behind in reading were now reading at the same level as the children on the quiet side of the building. Now, what did this tell me? It told me that A, we need research to demonstrate that noise is deleterious to our well-being, and we then need public officials who will respond in a way to lessen the noise. I was pleased to be able, and a number of years later, to join up with CHC. We knew then, when we first started, that there were enough studies to demonstrate that loud sounds are harmful to hearing. That's a given. We now know that sounds intruded on learning. And studies were beginning to appear that show that people who lived with these noises were experiencing stress, and stress on the body can eventually break down systems. So here we are all these years later. We have the literature, we have the studies, we have the research. We know that loud sounds are harmful to hearing. We know with studies done on millions of people that if you live near airports, you have an increased risk for cardiovascular disorders. We know that sleep is necessary for health, and people living with aircraft noise cannot get the requisite sleep. We know from studies past my study that children cannot learn in noisy environments. And here we are in 2020, and we still have to convince public officials to do more than they have done about lessening the decibel level in our environment. We're talking health. And from being an American and knowing that economics is important in our country, I also know that money is an issue. But let me ask you, doesn't it cost more money to remediate children whose learning is now a year behind what it should be? Doesn't it cost money for health, for people who are entering hospitals because of exposure to aircraft noise? If you think about it, we would be saving money. And yes, we have to talk money. We would be saving money if we reduced the noise levels. We would be saving costs to health. We'd be saving costs to education. We'd be saving costs also to mental well-being. We'd be saving costs, and yet we have not done enough. And that's what the sad thing about this is. We have the literature. We know what to do. We don't have the will to do it. And sadly, the United States was in a better position in the late 70s, because then our Environmental Protection Agency was cognizant of noise. We had a Noise Control Act. We had a division in EPA, the Office of Noise Abatement and Control, that said noise was harmful. The government of the United States in the late 70s put out literature that definitively stated that noise was a harmful pollutant. But we do not have EPA on board now. We no longer have the Office of Noise Abatement and Control, and we're allowing noises of our cities, particularly, but all over, to intrude on our health and well-being. Now, I know the World Health Organization has also stated that noise is harmful to health. So the positive thing about this anniversary is that I think more people are on board. We have more community groups. We have more organizations that are looking into the damaging effects of noise and hoping to work with us. That's the positive. The negative, unfortunately, is we haven't done enough. And so what I hope is that we move from this point and try to do more. But now we have the pandemic. And as Nancy has mentioned in her introduction, sounds have changed in our environment. New York City is definitely quieter. We don't have the honking horns. Today, construction started again, but there was no construction for a couple of weeks. And yes, people now working out of home have intruded upon their neighbors. And so there are more complaints within apartments from neighbor to neighbor, but less about the streets. And the other thing that happened on the good sounds, remember, noise are sounds that are harmful to our health. I'm no longer calling them annoying or bothersome or disturbing, harmful to our health. But on the other hand, the good sounds, the birds singing, the crickets, the raindrops falling, the children's voices in parks. And by the way, I'm a baseball and a football fan, and to me, the shouts at the stadium are definitely positive. There are good sounds, and there are groups now that are joining together to encourage people to support the parks and the quiet of parks, and to support areas in urban environments that can be quieter. So here's what I'm saying. As we move into what's going to be a new normal, let's not forget that the noise that we are listening to in our environment is definitely harmful to our health. Let me just add one thing. Some people have said they miss the honking of the horns. They miss the sounds. What they're really saying is they miss their former lives. I'm sure the same people, if they go forward and the noise of those cars start intruding on them again, they will complain. So as we move forward, let's try to remember that quiet is important in our lives. But there's another thing, and I'm gonna have to confess, I was a zoology major in college, guys. I know you think of me as a psychologist, zoology major. We have to share this planet with other species, and our man-made noises intrude on the animals on our planet. Those mammals in the waters, the mammals that walk the earth, is not only lessen the decibel level for the human being, but for those species that are equally entitled to protect this planet. And noise very much is linked to air pollution. We know that when we advocate for garden equipment that's quieter and less polluting. So use this time as a time to rethink how we're going to move forward so that we have a planet that is only not less air polluting, less noisy, but more welcoming to all the species that inhabit the planet. Thank you.
Thank you, Arlene. Thank you so much. And again, we're grateful to everything that you have done for all of us over the last many, many decades. Before we open it up for questions, I do want to hear from Elliot Berger. Many of you know Elliot, I think it's over 40 years. You're a researcher, scientist, author, really a leader in the field of hearing loss prevention and training. You have established national and international standards and regulations and personal hearing protection product development. And your perspective is always just so interesting. So I would love it if you would share a few words with us.
It's fun and interesting and unexpected to be here today. I was reading the Hearing Journal last week and saw an article by a woman named Nancy Nadler. And I said, wow, it's been probably 20 years since we've spoken. And back in the beginning of my career, I ran into Nancy, visited New York a few times. We worked together on some projects. I was quite involved in International Noise Awareness Day. And so it was lovely to reconnect. We've been emailing, talking about some of my other favorite topics like pickleball. And next thing I know, she says, hey, would you share a few words? So haven't had a lot of time to think about what I'd like to contribute here, but I do want to talk about the importance of sound, the beauty of sound, its magnificence in our lives. Arlene touched on that at the end of her words. I think her work has been a lot about the troubling aspects of sound and how to mitigate it. Certainly I've been concerned about that because my career was founded upon the yellow foam earplug, and I spent 42 years in a hearing protection research laboratory, but much of my ancillary work was related to encouraging people to want to use hearing protection to share their hearing, to protect their hearing. And for me, that meant encouraging people to be aware of how valuable and fantastic their ears were and why they wanted to protect them, and to point out some of the important things, emotional things that they would like to hear. Obviously, communication is important. Nancy pointed out one of the really unfortunate aspects of this virus, which is the use of masks and how that's going to make it so much more difficult for hearing impaired people to communicate. But I wanted to just take a moment to talk about a term that came up, which was soundscape. It's interesting you were talking about the change in the soundscape of Manhattan. There are groups like the World Forum on Acoustic Ecology that are quite focused on the soundscape. Some of you may not be familiar with that word. Murray Schafer is considered by many to be the father of acoustic ecology and the person generally credited with developing the term soundscape. And by that he meant the total field of sounds wherever we are. It's a word like landscape, though not strictly directed to the outdoors. Another interesting term that he created is one called ear cleaning. And for you audiologists online, and for Nancy, you're immediately thinking of using a curette or a vacuum or water to get the excess cerumen out of the ear, but that's not at all what Murray is talking about. His unusual coinage refers to exercises intended to educate people to more fully listen. He feels that careful listening is a practice that many of us have forgotten. And so his goal is to sensitize people to the miraculous world of sound. If we listen better, we may care more about the soundscape, and hopefully this leads to greater efforts to preserve it. He published a book in 1992 that was called A Sound Education, and it contained 100 exercises in listening and sound making. And although one of them was not specifically related to poetry about sound, it certainly talked about creating words that describe your auditory environment. In my talks, one of the things that I have shared is poetry that is about sound, that by its very nature is sound. And the first poem, and there's very few that I've found that really fit that niche. There's two that I'm aware of, and the first one I do want to share with you now. It's one of my favorites. It's by a little-known poet by the name of Thomas Lux, and it's by his collection called Unlike, for example, the Sound of a Rip-Toothed Saw. This was written in 2001. Gnawing through a shin bone, a high howl inside of which a bloody slashed-by growl's note is heard. Unlike that sound, and instead its opposite, a barely sounded sound. Put your nuclear ears on for it, your giant hearing horn, its cornucopia mouth open wide. A slippery whoosh of rain sliding down a mirror leaned against a wind-fallen tree stump. The sound a child's head makes falling against his mother's breast. Or the sound from a mile away as the town undertaker lets Grammy's wrist slip from his grip and fall to the shiny table. If you turn your head just right and open all your ears, you might hear this finest sound, this lost sound. A plow's silvery prow cleaving the earth, your finger dragging through milk, a razor cutting silk like a clipper ship cuts the sea. If you do hear this sound, then follow it with your ear and also your eye as it and the tractor that pulls it disappear over a hill until it is no sound at all, until it comes back over the hill again dragging its furrow, its ground rhythm, its wide open throat behind it. I think that poetry demonstrates the emotionality of sound. It's evocative. It speaks to us. For me, it called me to various times in my life and sounds that I heard. I felt strong emotions listening to it. Sounds definitely connect to our heart. And poetry about sound, I think, can do that especially well. In fact, in the next issue of the Spectrum, I'm very active with the National Hearing Conservation Association. In the next issue of the Spectrum, I've established an ear cleaning poetry contest because I'm aware of two such poems. The other one is by Maxine Kumin called The Sound of Night, which was written in 1925. I encourage you to Google it. But in our ear cleaning poetry contest, I'm asking members of NHCA to either write their own poetry about sound or to find for me some other poems of this nature. So I did want to share that. I'm not sure if you'd like me to stop now. I have one other 2 points, but I know there's many online, so I'll take my cue from you, Nancy.
Thank you, Elliot. That was great, and you're talking about the Spectrum. I encourage everyone to read that. Maybe we can send a link later so that people will be able to look into that, Elliot, for everyone that signed on.
Once it's published, I'll send you the PDF of that article.
Okay, great. Thank you. I know that there have been some questions, and there are people from different places around the world. Susan Edelman, I think you had something that you wanted to talk about, just your own experience and how you got involved in this, why you're here.
Oh, there I am, unmuted. Hi, glad to see everybody on the call. Thank you for coming and thank you for inviting me to join you. While I'm at this day slightly disappointed because we had a lot of conversations, sorry about that, that was my phone, leading up to today with a high level of excitement and celebration. I'm really glad that we are here to acknowledge the fact that this day is very important, despite and including what's going on today. So I'm really glad that you started off by incorporating today's event into today's events. I myself have a hearing disability. I wear hearing aids. And I was speaking with Nancy the other day about my personal challenges. And of course, everybody who wears hearing aids is having the same issue of flying hearing aids and inability to read lips and see facial expressions. So I am so grateful personally for the work that CHC does. Having said that, in real short clip of what we've been doing, I just started wearing hearing aids about 6 months ago, but I am not a newcomer to the family at CHC. I have nephews who were born with hearing disabilities, and one that leaned very heavily on the services that CHC has offered. He today is 21 and graduating Quinnipiac College. And personally, we, as a family, we owe a lot of gratitude to CHC. My wearing of hearing aids has come strictly from a noise-induced hearing loss. I have been working in advertising in the music business early in my life. I'm also a music enthusiast, so I have spent several decades either at live music events or in clubs, and so on and so forth. So when I read the New York Times article 2 years ago about the hearing loss and the connection with dementia and unattended hearing loss and all of the repercussions, I was greatly alarmed. And of course, I was in conversations with Nancy and the team at CHC about other things. And I had just expressed my, how did we not know about this? And Nancy said, well, you know, we have known about it in our community and in our circles. And we are just about to celebrate the 25th anniversary of International Noise Awareness Day. So it became something that obviously was on my radar, and I have a very good friend in the entertainment business, and long story short, we had gotten to a conversation about why we did not know this and how live music and loud sounds in the industry impacts hearing, and she's a friend of 30 years. So I said, your ears must be just in the same shape mine are, and she works at Live Nation, and the conversation had gone through her personal channels. And then 2 days later, somebody from her branding, VP of branding came in and said, you know, we have these hearing protection conversations going on and we need to incorporate them into our executive conversations. So without making any further grand announcements, and I see David's also on the call. Hi, David. We have been working on a project to bring hearing protection, International Noise Awareness Day, CHC, Live Nation, Eros, and Kill Noise all into this project, which was going to introduce to live music hearing protection in a much more formal way. And we were going to launch our conversation on the 25th anniversary of International Noise Awareness Day. So that's the Cliff Note version, but I just want to say that this project, everybody that's involved in this project is just as committed to it prior to virus, and we will be committed to it. Live music, hospitality, venues, every avenue of entertainment, whether it's movie theaters or anything that we don't actually think about normally outside of your community, of course. Now we want to bring it to everybody's attention, and it just seems so simple. And CHC is the perfect partner, and we are really, really super excited about picking up this project where we left off. And yeah, so thank you everybody for coming today, and I look forward to seeing everybody again in person to have a formal launch of these efforts. Thank you, Nancy, Lori, Ellen, everybody, David.
And
Who's in King?
Thank you, Susan. And David, who just raised his thumb, I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot because maybe you can answer this question or at least let us know what's going on at Eros. And I know that this is something that your company's really working hard. How do we get young people? And I guess we may say 12 to 35-year-olds. It's a big range of young, but they're young. How do we get them to protect their hearing? I mean, it's been going on for years, and I know Eros has some thoughts about that. So if I could put you on the spot, give us a minute or two, and thank you for all the work that you've been doing in the field and with us.
Yeah, certainly. And thanks to everybody for being here. Thanks to CHC for hosting this really important day for so long. And, we're really excited to be a part of it as a company. Just a quick background on Eros and our company. It was founded by my partner, Ronnie Madra, in 2015. He had a long career in the hospitality industry before that, operating nightclubs primarily, and unfortunately damaged his own hearing, developed some pretty serious tinnitus through doing that, and decided that he wanted to try to do something about that issue and create a new hearing protection solution that was particularly designed for people who love music, who love socializing, love loud recreational environments, and try to enable them to still enjoy those experiences, but do so in a way that was healthy for their ears. So we, with the help of some really great audiologists, acousticians, vibration engineers, were able to develop a product called Euroswan that's an acoustic filter for these loud entertainment venues that you wear in your ears. It reduces the decibel level, but still allows you to hear sound clearly, enjoy music, talk to people. It has a very sleek design so that hopefully you're not embarrassed to be seen wearing it. And instead, we're doing a lot of work to try to make it actually a cool item and a cool product that young people will want to wear and want to be seen wearing. Because we do believe that the social stigma that exists around hearing protection is something that's really important to try to reverse. And think about an analogy with eye protection with sunglasses. That's something that's become a fashionable item, and that's something that people wear, for the protective reason, but also for the reason of being stylish. And we think if there's a way to do that with hearing protection, then that could be a really big way to reverse that trend we're seeing of young people developing hearing damage because of recreational noise. Nancy, I think, alluded to the World Health Organization study around this issue, finding that 1.1 billion young people are at risk of hearing damage because of recreational noise. And so, we're really working hard on just trying to message to young people that it doesn't have to be, you're not any less of a music fan, you're not any less of a cool person if you decide to protect your ears. And we think that really it's going to be important to get influencers, whether that be artists or celebrities or the people that these young people look up to really communicate that message. And we think musicians in particular are in a great position to do that, because as a musician, your fans' health and well-being is critical to what you're doing, and specifically the health and well-being of their ears is what enables them to continue enjoying your music for a long time to come. So that's one big area we're working on, and Susan Edelman and Live Nation and this partnership she alluded to is going to be really important for trying to take that to the next level. But that's just in a nutshell. Would love to connect with all you folks about the work that you're doing and how we can work together towards this issue, because we think there's a lot that needs to be done, but amazing to see everybody here and to hear about all the great work that's being done by so many people.
Thanks, David. I'm going to take my prerogative before we open it up to questions. I mean, you could all be typing in questions, but we can open it up a little bit more. I'm going to take my liberty and put somebody else on the spot. I'm Val Whedon from London. You're obviously one of our international guests today, and I know that you've been involved with us almost from the beginning, maybe from the beginning. maybe you could let us know what's going on in London most recently about noise. Is there a burning issue? Is it similar to what we experience or different?
Well, yes. Hi, everybody. I'm from London, although I now live out in Kent, which is just outside London. My colleague is also here today, John Stewart, and maybe I could hand over to John, because John has been more proactive in recent years than I have. I'm now just honorary president of the UK Noise Association, so I'm not as active as I used to be. But yeah, I've been involved with INAD right from the beginning, 25 years. I'd already been campaigning for 5 years and was finding it really hard going, trying to get our government to listen to us, the noise campaigners. We were seen as a bit of a novelty. We were ridiculed and called oversensitive and all sorts of things. But when I connected with Arlene, hi Arlene, it's lovely to see you.
Hi, Val. Hi, darling.
We've been great friends since then, since I made contact with Arlene, and her research really opened the gates, and the government started to listen to us. Once we could prove, we had some proof, that there was evidence that it wasn't just noise doesn't just affect our hearing, but it has this stress effect on us. And also it affects us in lots of other ways, like studying, recovering from health, as well as, you know, being a nuisance, noise from neighbours as an example. And I met up with John. After about another few years, John and I connected, and I set up an organisation called Noise Network, which I really wanted to work with other noise campaigners, because my expertise was in neighbour noise, but I wanted to connect with other people involved in other aspects of noise. And I met up with John and a few others, and we used to meet on a regular basis. And in the year 2000 we formally launched the UK Noise Association. So this year is the UK Noise Association's 20th anniversary. So we're a little way behind INAD, but today we also celebrate an anniversary. As I say, I mean, I worked really quite flat out for about 10 years promoting noise awareness, and then I retired in 2007 because originally I'd been involved in the music industry as a promoter, and I worked with musicians, and I wanted to go back to that. I got involved in the noise issue because I'd had a neighbour problem, someone who was playing loud music all the time. And I found it quite intriguing that my response was quite negative, and I became quite ill over it. And as a music lover, I was working at a radio station and playing music, and I worked with musicians. So I found it quite intriguing why it had such an impact on me. And that's when, obviously, when I came into contact with Arlene, I was able to learn a lot more about why I had that negative response, because noise is sounds that you don't want to listen to, basically. So you have this stress effect. So, you know, having someone forcing their music, you know, I might love some of the music that was being forced on me to listen to, but I didn't want to listen to it every day, all day long, which is what my neighbour was doing to me. So it was a bit like a torture. So, you know, in the last, I've been more supportive, I've been in a supportive role. John, maybe I could hand over to John shortly, because John picked up the reins when I took a step back, and he's been heavily involved with aircraft noise, and so he took up the reins for the UK Noise Association because he had an active role with what he was doing. And he's continued the work. But there's about 5 of us on the management team, and Arlene's very much involved with us, and we put together a book some years ago called Why Noise Matters, which, you know, if anybody hasn't read it, you should read it, because we put all our efforts, the work that we had done over the years, everything that we knew, we put into that book. So it's a bit of a Bible, really, for any new people coming along, getting involved in noise campaigning. They can read that and then cut out all the work that we had to do in going away and finding out things for ourselves. So that's a good source of information if you haven't come across it yet. But yeah, can I hand over to John, because I'm not a very good public speaker. So I think I'll finish there. But thanks to Arlene. I did want to thank Arlene for all the work that she's done, and she has worked tirelessly, and I do admire her for keep going.
Thank you.
We would be nowhere without Arlene. She's our energy as well. And I can't wait to come to New York to see you all.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Val, and thanks for inviting us on. I chair the UK Noise Association. I've also been involved heavily over the last 15 or so years in opposing a third runway at Heathrow Airport. Just very quickly to pick up a number of things that have been said. I think to agree really with Arlene that we share the same frustration in the UK, that the solutions are there. It's the political will that's missing. And that is hugely frustrating. But it seems to be exactly the same situation as you have in the US. The other thing I wanted to pick up really was some of the stuff that Nancy was saying of the experience during the lockdown. And I think it's both been positive and it's been negative in London and probably the UK generally. The positive side has been the streets and the air has been so much quieter. The cars have been virtually absent, and I live in inner London, and I can walk down a main road and hear the birds singing for the first time in my life. I shouldn't be able to do that in inner London. And what we're hoping, and this is the interesting thing, how can we capture that experience and ensure that it, to some extent, becomes the norm? Now, it's never going to fully become the norm, because I think the immediate reaction after the lockdown is a lot of people will take their cars big time because they'll be afraid of using public transport. But on the other hand, what has happened during the lockdown is on those quieter streets, people, children, older people have cycled and walked in a way they never have had the freedom to do before. What we're hoping is that there'll be enough public pressure to retain that freedom so that at least in part, we will have more livable streets than we had before the lockdown. The downside of the lockdown has been neighbour noise, as I think Nancy and others have said. People are cooped up in their own homes, and if they've got a noisy neighbour beside them, there's very little they can do. So there's been a positive and a negative, but we're hoping as we come out of the lockdown as campaigners to try and accentuate the positive and see if we can make that more of the norm in years to come. Just one last thing. Val did sort of downplay her role over the last 20, 30 years. Val single-handedly 30 years ago put noise back on the UK agenda. And there's a number of pieces of legislation like the 1996 Noise Act, which is entirely down to Val. So since I'm not in the same room as her and she won't tell me off, I'll embarrass her just a little bit. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, John and Val. I just had to come off of mute. I just figured I'd let you know I'm in an apartment in Forest Hills, and I had to mute myself completely because they were mowing the lawn or doing something, and I couldn't hear myself think. So I thought it was sort of perfectly appropriate that I had to mute myself because of the noise. So I apologize if you hear it. It's a little bit better now. I just wanted to point out somebody else who's very important to us in New York City and involved in a lot of work. Charles Shamoon of the DEP. Thank you so much for everything that you and your department does. We've always had a really nice relationship with you, and I know it's a challenging problem in New York. if you'd like to say a word or two, and then I encourage anybody, we have taken everybody off of mute, but you can keep yourself muted if you choose to. I still haven't figured out how to officially raise your hand in Zoom, so this works if you want to talk, so we don't all talk at the same time. Charles?
Yes, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to attend these meetings, and Nancy was a great support for us in starting around 2002, 2003, as part of the lobbying effort to create a better code. And on part of DEP, it's an award-winning code used by many jurisdictions. And then basically what Arlene said was very, very critical about the shutting of the federal noise office. A lot, in other words, we all hear loud diesel trucks during the course of the day, and just not to pick on trucks, but sirens too. These are, there's a lot of regulations that these vehicles, and it's getting better, but are legal. So in other words, they're legal for the US. That these are levels that are picked, and for sirens too, these are levels that are picked by major jurisdictions. And that what a city can do versus what the federal government can do is an ongoing battle, even in COVID-19. And I'm very fortunate also to have established a relationship with NYU, the engineering school. Now, I have a technical background and a law degree. And basically, they at NYU, they have postdoctoral engineers coming up with a method of using artificial intelligence and the latest possible technology to monitor noise. And we can quantify these things and present it to the powers that be on a higher level of government to make some changes in what is legal, and try DEP's code, just briefly, in our construction code, which was honored by the CDC and NIOSH, was we have many different mitigation methodologies within the code. So we just don't tell people you have to meet a standard. We show them these engineering controls, and that's what we need, is more of that kind of intervention to show people easy ways to easier ways to meet standards in the code. So briefly, like I said, I want to thank Nancy and Arlene especially, and I've heard of many of you, and I just say keep up the good work.
Thank you so much, Charles. And I'm just having a great time putting people on the spot because nobody's putting in questions, so I'm just gonna make people.
I've got it.
Okay, I'm sorry. I won't cut you off, Lynn. I just wanted to turn to Ronnie because I now see your picture somehow showed up. So Ronnie, if you could maybe add a little bit to what David said. Thank you so much for your participation and your caring about this. And then Lynn, if I forget, Lynn, remind me that you're next.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I just got on, so I didn't know what the question or where we are. I was trying to sign on, but it wasn't working, so I just got on.
Oh, sorry about that. If you could just talk, David spoke a little bit about Eros. We asked about, how you get younger people. If you want to maybe just give a minute or two of your background and what made you so interested in the whole issue of noise.
So I guess, obviously having a close connection to the issue of hearing damage and more self-inflicted than anything else. So I'm in the club business, entertainment, production business for over 25 years in New York. And, we've produced and built nightclubs, bars, restaurants, produced loud events, worked with festivals, And 5 years ago, I had my hearing checked, and my doctor said that if I don't stop going out, stop doing my job, that I would go deaf before I was before 50. So with the ringing in my ears and a lot of different issues that came because of my hearing damage, I decided to start a company that would address the noise in loud environments. That would the product would actually protect the individual that works in the environment, but also patronize the environment. So Eros came out of necessity, but also I think having tried so many hearing protection equipment all over the world and going to audiologists, doing appointments at least like a few times a few times a year, it really showed me there was a missing piece to the market where young individuals weren't able to access really adequate hearing protection equipment over the counter or in those pain points where people actually go, where they realize, oh, I probably need to protect my hearing here. And so we developed Eros to be sleek and cool so a young individual wouldn't mind wearing it. Engineered it so it can function and also be comfortable for long periods of time. And we really spend a lot of time and resources and engineering and science and just slap it all into this little product to really make it, a game-changing product. And we're not trying to compete with earplugs because they just block everything out. And you're not going to stop young people and individuals to go to concerts or to nightclubs or loud environments. And we live in loud, or at least we used to. So we saw a real, crucial part of our business was really the hospitality workers. And in America alone, there's almost 50 million hospitality workers that are suffering from hearing damage or exposed, and that's recorded to loud environments exceeds about 100 and over 100 dBs. So we were really excited about bringing some level of innovation and disruption to that world, because there hasn't been a company that really appealed to the younger demographic or the outgoing demographic, that people that really enjoy going to these environments on a regular basis. So what the product does, I'm sure David mentioned, it filters out all the harmful decibels that damages your hearing, and it actually allows you to listen to music much more clear without compromising your hearing health. So I've been crusading for that for the last 5 years, and David came on a few years ago as an incredible asset to the company and a partner, and we've been working hand in hand and really just working with organizations like the CHC and other organizations that would want our services and try to bring a level of style to it, and really just capture the eye of that individual, that ear of that individual, that pair of ears that we want to capture, and really give them a product that actually fits, that actually works, that is not custom made, and it actually is affordable at the same time. Sorry.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Ronnie. Lynn, you wanted to say something before. Lynn Robinson, I believe.
Yes, I'm from Toronto. I live on Toronto Island in the harbor here, and we have an astonishing number of concerts in the harbor every summer, including huge Live Nation concerts. We've got an immense nightclub right near us, and we mostly our houses shake all summer. So I've spent a lot of my adult life in the last 25 years working primarily in the enforcement area, and it's not an area I want to be in. I think that moving back to prevention is much to be supported. So I wanted to tell you about a group we have here called The Promise. There are a couple of probably fairly small-time promoters who do EDM concerts every Sunday. They have for 15 years. And they do it on a beach in Toronto Harbor. And they are awesome. Their motto, everyone loves them. They are the nicest people in the world. And their motto is leave it cleaner than when you came and don't bother the neighbors. It's not cool to bother the neighbors is the way they approach it. And we're friends. We have little email conversations once every year or two. They get loud. I email them, they fix their sound system. They have been such good neighbors that when they got into trouble with the Parks Department, that really wasn't their fault, I went to City Hall and lobbied to have them reinstated. And that was kind of scary for me, but I put myself out and I did that. So the idea that, I mean, you're saying you're trying to promote the idea that it's cool to protect your hearing. There's another idea out there that would be very helpful to all of us, and that it's cool not to bother the neighbors. You know, manage your noise so you don't bother the neighbors. Would be helpful to all of us. I don't want to be in court. I want to have good neighbors amongst the people who are making noise all around me, and for the most part, I do. For instance, we're good neighbors with Live Nation, who run massive concerts here at Ontario Place, massive. But we had some trouble with them. Our houses were shaking 4 miles away. We met with them and they fixed it. This is good. This is the best way to go about it. So the idea that it's cool to be mindful of the neighbors is wonderful for all of us. And I if you have ways to encourage that, those of you here who are in the music business, I'd be very grateful. It's an awesome way to approach noise enforcement, just to start off as friends.
Thank you. I think I couldn't agree more with you about that. And I'm wondering, I got a message from William Murphy that William Murphy and Keita Jones have some news regarding the efforts to improve information to the public using the Wikipedia platform. And I wonder if either one of you want to mention a little bit about that. I have the link that we can share with everybody later on what that addresses, and if that addresses any of the points that we've spoken about so far. Either one of you. I think you're both unmuted. Whoops. You're both muted, but you can unmute yourself. It's not coming from us.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm Keita. I work with the Acoustical Society of America, and with the motivation really from NIOSH and CDC, we wanted to try and get information in front of people through a platform that they actually often use. So with ASA, a lot of our members, and perhaps many of you here, the way that we get access to data and information is through peer-reviewed journals. And that is not generally how the public gets that information. A lot of people, the first thing that they do is they go to Google or they go to Wikipedia. And so with that in mind, and with evidence from NIOSH and CDC with times that they have gone to improve Wikipedia, we want to put information about noise, noise awareness, noise protection, hearing protection, and in general, because we're the Acoustical Society, just about acoustics on Wikipedia. And to that end, last year, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, there was a World Hearing Day Wikipedia effort where the same kind of information we asked our members, we asked the public, any experts in the field to go to Wikipedia and improve Wikipedia, put the information in front of people so that they can use it. It was also used in classrooms where professors could encourage their students to, for particular assignments, to go and improve Wikipedia pages related to noise and hearing loss. And we have found that that has been very successful. Those Wikipedia articles that are improved, there's tons of them now that are at the best ranking in terms of how Wikipedia sorts and categorizes their pages. And so this year, for the International Year of Sound, and overall, we're doing another campaign to get acoustics information, noise information, hearing loss information, hearing science information on Wikipedia, and we're asking, of course, our members, but anyone really who has access to. And what's nice is that it's open access. Of course, anyone can go onto Wikipedia, and they are very diligent. And we also now have a team that makes sure the information that goes onto these particular Wikipedia articles is correct and is up to date. And so that campaign is ongoing through 2020 and now into 2021, because we have extended the International Year of Sound. And so I certainly encourage anyone here on this call or to share with anyone that they know that this is a great way to get this information in front of people so that everyone has access to it. And of course, if Bill has anything to add, I encourage him to do so.
I thought I saw Charles' hand up.
Yes, yeah, let me just say, on behalf of DEP, that we are mentioned in Wikipedia, and this is a very important issue that I brought up earlier, is we're mentioned on Wikipedia in Buy Quiet. So if you Google Buy Quiet and on Wikipedia, you'll see we're the top name there, along with NASA and other organizations. And I think that comes from recommending, mitigation ideas. And I just had a question for Ronnie. Ronnie, do you know the Nightlife Mayor, Ariel Palitz?
Yeah, she's a very close friend of mine. We work very closely together on many
Right. So she, I'm sure she would be very interested in your product because they have a website where they promote DP and other things. Then.
Yeah, I mean, just to Lynn, just to add to what you said. Yes, we already have practices in place for our neighbors and soundproofing, and we do care about our businesses. I'm just talking about our company was basically also to solve the immediate problem of the individuals in those environments, because it's very hard to, obviously you can't tell people to stop dancing and stop listening to music loud, but we can do what we can from our end to mitigate the escape of noise into other people's homes and rattling of homes, just to put that out there.
Yeah, we have that online too. What I was thinking of was you developed hearing protection for the workers. That's what I got from you.
Yeah, for the workers and for the patrons.
Because right, and that's great because there have been lawsuits by workers that they were exposed to extreme levels of music over the years. So that would be, if your product, you might bring it to those forums to receive attention. I think there is a need.
Thank you. We've been working hard on that. Thank you.
I'm going to take. I'm sorry. Yeah, I just want to take.
Arlene?
I want to take two more questions. First, Elliot has had his hand up, and then Arlene, just before, in case I forget at the end, because I might, remember our new website, noiseawareness.org. It's I believe, and Nancy will certainly correct me if I'm wrong, it's a place and an opportunity for you to get information about what you're doing, and so we can gather it and share it. So take a look at it. It's a good way to get information out, and it's brand new. I think it launched, Nancy, yesterday or this morning, perhaps. So it's new. Any glitches, just let Nancy know, and we'll take care of it and get it working better. So if I could have Elliot and then Arlene, and then I think we'll try to end. This has been wonderful. Elliot?
You mentioned earlier about raising your hand. I see you saw that I raised my hand.
I saw you did. So you did a great job. We've got both
the participants list. You see,
we're going to give you a gold star.
Just wanted to follow up. The work on Wikipedia is fabulous, and I mentioned earlier the National Hearing Conservation Association and the upcoming issue of the Spectrum that'll have an article about ear cleaning and poetry. It's also going to have an article written by Thais Morata and Bill Murphy on the Wikipedia effort with statistics through the end of April. And so that issue should be appearing in the next couple weeks, and it has links to all of the pages and ways that people can contribute. Some of you may have been curious about my background here. No, that's not my home office. It is the 1 square inch of silence. So I just wanted to put a call out for people like Gordon Hempton and Bernie Krause, who are nature sound recordists and popularize the importance of quiet spaces. Gordon established the 1 square inch. I was on the board of directors there for a while, and it was a fabulous opportunity to hear what he has labeled one of the quietest places in America. And just one last thought, I shared this with Nancy the other day in terms of getting people more aware of hearing, is we can also notice that our choice of language when we speak about knowledge and awareness. For example, in order to change our focus, people would often say, let's watch what we say. But might it not be more appropriate to say, in order to change our focus, let's listen to what we say? I think you'll begin to see what I mean. I think perhaps I should say you'll begin to hear what I mean as you think about this. Isn't it curious how often we overlook the importance of hearing? Perhaps we could say we neglect it. Or people say, I'm going to see the string quartet tonight, when actually they really mean they're going to go hear that string quartet. So I shared these ideas with Samara Kester, who was the president of the 1 square inch board. And after I said my few words, she said, Elliot, thank you. Now I really look at the world differently. And then she sort of went, now I hear the world differently. So let's just think about how we use our language. The visual metaphors are much more bountiful than the auditory ones, but I think if we can get in words that encourage us to think about our ears and hearing, that can be valuable. Thank you.
Thank you, Elliot. Arlene?
Yes, I'd like to talk about the New York City Department of Environmental Sound and Noise Module. The city's, New York City DP's education department has developed a curricula for grades from the lower grades through high school to educate young people on the importance of protecting their hearing, on the beauty of the good sounds in the world, and the dangers of the harmful sounds. So if you want to reach young people, you start by reaching them early on in the first grade, and you begin to develop programs in the school. Since New York City's DP Sound and Noise Module is on the website, anyone in the world can access and get the curricula. And for the young children, let me put in a plug for my book, which I must say first started with Center for Hearing and Communication publishing it, and now DP. It's called Listen to the Raindrops. It talks about the beautiful sounds in our world, and then it tells you to protect yourself from the harmful sounds. It is beautifully illustrated by Stephen Parton, who is part of CHC, and it says at the end that we all have to protect ourselves. And only when we do protect our ears from the harmful sounds will we all, one and all, forever hear raindrops fall.
Thank you, Arlene. That's a perfect way to end this session. I thank you all again so much for making the time, for helping us celebrate. We look forward to April, I don't know the date, 2021, where perhaps we can go back to our bigger, less socially isolated experiences. We don't know yet, but I think I can say for all of us at CHC, we're very happy to be able to participate with you and have a non-COVID related event that we could pay attention to and enjoy. And just thank you all for participating.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was wonderful to see
Bye.
everyone. Stay
Bye.
safe, everyone. Stay safe. Bye-bye.
Well, bye.